Thank you so very much for joining us for our Information Security Leaders panel discussion on preventing and securing against cyber and information security threats. Joining us as the moderator of this panel discussion is Mr. Atul Gupta, Partner, IT Advisory Services, Risk Consulting and Head, Cybersecurity, KPMG India. Thank you so very much for joining us. May I also present to you our panelists. A very warm welcome to Dr. Yask, CISO, Indian Oil Corporation Limited. May I also present to you Mr. Pawan Chawla, CISO and Data Protection Officer, Future Generali, India Life Insurance. Also joining us is Mr. Sanjay Pugaonkar, CISO, SBI Mutual Fund. And once again, let's look forward to this very interesting panel discussion. Over to you, Mr. Gupta.
Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in today on a session which will talk about one of the most commonly looked upon and talked upon threats, which is cyber. Cyber risk and information security is becoming something which is having a wider impact across organizations, irrespective of what industries the organizations are coming in from. It's a great privilege today for me to moderate this panel along with fellow colleagues, starting with Dr. Yask, Mr. Sanjay, and Mr. Pawan. All of them obviously are professionals in focusing on information security and cybersecurity. And today's conversation will really focus upon elements which organizations need to look upon in today's time, as well as need to prepare ourselves to realize the resilience aspects which in the world of cybersecurity needs to be adopted by each and every organization. I would just get started by setting a broad context, and then we'll bring in each one of the speakers to share their perspectives on how they are looking at cybersecurity and what would they like each of the audiences to have a takeaway from today's session. As KPMG, we've been doing globally multiple study reports across cybersecurity. And it's no surprise that over the last 5 years, consecutively, cybersecurity has emerged as top 3 risks areas identified by global CEOs. And you heard it right, it's the CEOs, not the CIOs, not the CISOs. And when the CEOs are looking at cybersecurity as top 3 business risks, that's also in context of saying, if cyber risk is not managed well, it could have more significant impact on the business growth of the organization. It's clearly visible that the number of security incidents have significantly gone up. Many reports tell us that in year 2021, the count of cybersecurity incidents have grown multifold. Some of the reports go ahead and claim that this, compared to year 2020, has more than doubled the number of incidents which have happened. It's not just the volume of incidents which has changed, it's the nature of cyber incidents which has changed. In past, it used to be more of a nuisance. Today, it impacts the business. It's focused, very specifically targeted, and it's going after where it hurts organizations, industries, and in many cases, economies of the country. With all of that happening and pandemic bringing into reality what the world is knowing or calling it upon new normal, CISOs have played an extremely important role in making sure that organizations and enterprises are ready to deal with this new challenge. As KPMG, we call, CISOs' roles have transformed quite significantly over the last 20 months. There used to be a perception on CISO's role where it used to be more on enforcer to comply with various requirements. Vis-a-vis today, CISO is not just enforcer, but CISO has become an influencer, where CISO has to influence on the various digital transformation programs which organizations are driving. CISOs have to be right up ahead when those decisions are being taken upon in the organization, and the big shift is happening at a very accelerated pace. With that background and with that context, I think we will get started to bring upon all the panel members into conversation and get their perspectives as professionals, how they are seeing the reality on the live. I'll start with Dr. Yask. Dr. Yask, clearly we are seeing at this point of time, the nature of cyber security is no longer looked upon from a technology lens. It's being looked upon from a business lens. The concerns which I highlighted, where the global CEOs is rating it amongst the top three risks for businesses. How are you getting to see as an organization and across the industry, has that perception really changed, where senior management and the board members are getting really concerned about cybersecurity at this point of time? Dr. Yask, over to you, please.
Right. Thank you, Atul. Thank you for having me here. And a small disclaimer first, I'm here in my personal capacity, so obviously my views might not be subscribed by my organization. Right. So this is a very important question that you have put up, Atul. In fact, you mentioned a couple of things, that in the last couple of years, the cyber risk is among the top three concerns of the CEOs. And I think it is not, I mean, this in itself speaks volumes about the concern or the way cyber is now being perceived by the businesses. What is important to note is that just about a decade back, if you go back a decade, when we used to talk about security and cyber security, we probably used to look at only limited IT functions. Then came the time of the OT, which became important somewhere around 2010. Organizations woke up to the fact that OT is also something that is being attacked. Slightly later than that came the issue of the privacy, in which the data was being looked at. That was also one major concern. And now in 2020-21, although what pandemic has done is that really brought forward the concept of teleworking, with which a lot of new threat vectors have come in. Before I'm talking about pre-pandemic times, pre-COVID days, the newer in the advent of IIoTs. Now this is another chapter that has added to the business of any organization, I would say, of a fairly decent size. So the problem now is, or rather the issue now is that when we talk about cybersecurity, it is not just limited to IT. It is now IT, it is OT, it is IIoT. On top of it is the privacy, and finally, the thing which is sitting on top of all of these is the compliance issue. There is also a statutory requirement. Now, obviously, with all of these happening, it is certainly going to become a matter of concern. Not only do the companies have to comply with the legal statutes of the countries, there are a lot many things happening. If you look at what is happening in our country, also there is this PDP which has been tabled in the parliament, or would be tabled later this week probably. There is a lot of concern about the data flowing outside the geographical boundaries. And my point on this is, I have always thought that privacy and all these should not be looked at purely from a security lens. Unfortunately, what is happening is that all of this is coming under the security umbrella. So for an organization to now look at, one, compliance certainly remains the topmost priority. Second, the cyber risk. In pandemic, what happened? The teleworking, which was alien concept to a lot many organizations, suddenly became a very common thing. Now, the users all across, the machines all across, the data is all across, and now the security, and that is not, again, I would not go by the terms that this is the new normal. This is where we are. All these statistics data that 2021 saw the maximum number of attacks, this is just a number. 2022 is going to probably have more number of attacks than 21, and so on. So the point, what I'm trying to make is that the landscape has expanded. The threat vector, obviously, the threat actors and the vector has also expanded. Technology has not been keeping at pace with the way the business is wanting things to happen. Just to give you a small example, IoT still do not have a standard when it comes to security. However, this is now a must. Whenever you talk about any business optimization, digitization, IIoT is the first thing that you think of. So therefore, the issue is complex. The way security is looked at it certainly should be a matter of concern. But good thing, the silver lining is that now security is being talked in the boardrooms. So there is a lot of emphasis on it, a lot of impetus, and some companies, or I remember some security professionals used to talk about the budget constraint. I don't think so that is anymore the case with the kind of things happening around. So all in all, I would say yes, we are in a complex and interesting time, but yes, at the same time, a lot of things happening on the security front from the professionals as well.
Thank you, Dr. Yask. Very, very fair points which you made upon over there. I think this silver lining which you highlighted will be great message to all the audience who are sitting out there. And 2 points which you made, security being discussed in the boardroom and budgets not being a constraint. And clearly, a lot more to be done, what you highlighted on having the standards coming across. And I know you referred on IIoT, but from OT itself, there's a long way to go still. And everyone is on this journey together, but your points were very fair. I think one point which you brought in, which possibly makes me to move to our next panelist also, which is on security and privacy, where you brought in saying that should we be looking at by the same lens, or does it get misinterpreted many times, looking at by the same lens, while there is a clear overlap between both the areas, but they have their own places as well. I'll pick up that theme and I'll possibly move to Pawan. Pawan, in your role as being a CISO and a DPO, you deal with both these subjects quite closely, which is from a security perspective as well as from a data protection. Clearly, globally, we have recognized the way how data and the entire protection mechanisms or privacy mechanisms are emerging. They are changing at a very, very fast pace. And simultaneously, cyber is evolving. Just to get your thoughts on that one before we dwell deeper, it will be good to get your insights, Pawan. How are you looking at it?
Things have changed a lot, Atul. As we look at it, early 2020, what we used to be the case when we all were working in the organization, from the organization and accessing organizational resources. Now, suddenly things have moved since March 2020, so and have come down to a box which is of 28 into 28 inches, which is your laptop or a desktop screen, or the machine, the CPU, which you probably may have at your home. So everything, the parameters from firewall to network devices has come down to your laptop. So data which has been accessed through office resources, now it has suddenly become accessible over the laptops, which you are accessing over the open internet, and trying to do the conduct the business transaction. The threat vectors has evolved, as Yask also talked about, and you also mentioned, and we know that the way attacks are happening, they have become more automatic, and they have been enhanced more than the cybersecurity controls which we have or we could implement in an organization. We can't match up the pace the attackers are attacking organizations today. Whereas if you see the industry, how it has been evolved from exploiting the vulnerabilities which are there in the existing product, now you can actually hire attackers at a cost of $40 per hour to plant an attack in a particular organization, or you can buy a ransomware as low as $10 on dark and deep web. So which used to be a premium thing in the past, now has become much more normal, regularized, or easily available to a common man as well. If somebody has a malicious intent, can use make use of such resources and then attack. Now, considering all these aspects, I mean, with the way attackers are now evolving, making the attacks automated, obviously data security plays a very critical role, and preventing those data controls, preventing that data for an organization plays a very important role. And to ensure a data privacy of your customers, it is very important first to analyze that where the data lies, and how you can protect, then build the parameter how you can protect that out. Because the way it has been assessed by the business guys today is not used to be the case as it used to be in the past. Because while people were working on office, the parameter was pretty much very clear. Today, the parameter has moved from there to laptop, desktop, as I mentioned. So the control is not there. Hence, it becomes very important to analyze what is going on in that particular machine, which a user is accessing either from airport, either from free internet cafes, or at home. Because remember, your home internet is also not safe. You can only put control to what you know, because your end user is not tech savvy. They may not be able to harden the routers which are there, which may cause hindrance to other services which others in the whom may be assessing as well. So hence it is very important to educate users in order to prevent data for the organization. You need to keep sending the awareness emailers to them, keep checking with them whether they are well versed with the knowledge of what is going on today. We have seen numerous examples in the past with various organizations, how the attacks had happened, and it all starts with a human mistake. So then everyone must have heard of a terminology called human firewall, which has been quite popular and have been talked about in every forum. And that is the need of the hour today. The more you make your people worse, when I say worse, it's educated. When you make people more educated about new kind of attacks which are happening, the more you will be able to protect the organization. And it is a habit which needs to be built in within an organization rather than making it as one-time practice by implementing a control in your solutions or in the softwares which are there on your laptop, desktops, or at a parameter level. So that's something which needs to be focused upon and and we have been trying that practice to ensure our customers' data stays secure within the organization.
Great points. Thank you, Pawan. I think when you alluded on this entire last 18 months, 20 months journey of moving away from the corporate firewalls, corporate security layers, moving it into a laptop or a desktop, has also resulted in newer concepts, maybe not new, but concepts being talked more upon, which is zero trust and equivalent concepts coming through, and how endpoint security has become so important, which you emphasized very clearly. And I think what you beautifully brought upon is the human firewall aspect. The more you do, the lesser is possibly effectiveness, which is still coming across and maybe resulting in incidents still to go through. But very, very fair points. And the linkages which you brought from data protection and awareness and security controls, I think all of them are really required at this moment. Thank you for making those points. I'll use this point and move forward to Sanjay. Sanjay, we have heard from Yask, from Pawan, on the increase of the threat vectors as well as actors. And as Yask said, it's just a number. 2021 has seen number of security incidents. 2022 may have something else for us in store. And that's very clearly bringing a perspective today to organizations to start looking beyond protection and detection. It's focusing on resilience, because this is not going away from us. Will be great to get your perspective, Sanjay, on cyber resilience.
Sure, Atul. In continuation to Yask and Pawan's perspective, I would like to, I will just go 20 years back, when the things are started. So basically, the cyber security or the information security, cyber is the terminology recently came out. Before that, information security was the terminology, or IT security was the terminology that used to happen. And what is that? Earlier days, it talks about the security or about the threats. So it starts with the kind of viruses or malwares, or spams. Also, these are the early days. For that, some of the technologies that used to happen and that used to control it. So maybe a antivirus, or maybe anti-phishing, anti-spam. This kind of technology used to be installed by all the organizations for the protection of these kind of threats. But threats are evolving. As Yash said, the era of 1929 or 2020 or 2021, it's continuously evolving. Now, what is that evolvement? So evolvement is basically, it's actually creating a complexity. So complexity to the organizations, wherein the kind of malware, it is now so sophisticated, so intelligent. So it is the detection of that the malware is so difficult. So earlier days, what we used to install is the firewall, IPS, IDS kind of technology, or traditional SOC used to happen for the monitoring of the threats. But is that sufficient? The answer is no, because threats is consistently evolving. Now, what is that technology it needs now? So it has to be a kind of intelligent technology that is required to be installed by the organizations now. So because the era has changed, now the threat landscape has changed. The APT kind of threats that has come, which even not detected by these traditional SOC kind of technologies or the firewall or IPS kind of technology. You must have anti-APT kind of solution that has to be installed at the endpoint as well at the network level. So you will have all the monitoring mechanisms to detect it. Once it detects, it also has capability to protect it. So the if I consistently telling that the era has changed, it has, and it is not only for the particular segment, it has captured to the all the segments. So BFI is the main segment, but it is not limited to only that segment. It is far away changed to all the segments. It is now targeting pharma. It is now targeting the power sectors. So threat landscape is consistently changing. Now, what is that we should have, right? So resilience plan. What is that resilience plan we should have? So there are two terminologies I can talk about. The terminology is the mean time to know it, right? Or mean time to recover it. So these are the two terminologies from the resilience perspective I can talk about. So how quickly you detect it, right? So how quickly you detect the recovery time is very, very less. If it is not detected, then the things will be devastating. So you won't be able to do, then the things will go beyond your management. Now, what is it? What is that technology are required nowadays? So everybody has now thought of, or they heard of the name, which is called the kind of the advanced monitoring, right? So next generation SOC. What is that next generation SOC is basically? The next generation SOC is talks about the SIM kind of platform, which is the traditional, but on top of what is that SOAR platform? SOAR is the intelligent platform which takes decisions on quicker basis. Also, there is a NBAD and UBAD kind of technologies that has to be integrated with the SOAR and SIM kind of technology. So this integrated technology module is required nowadays to actually quickly monitoring of these threats. So this one of the area I would like to say that we must move from traditional SOC to the next gen SOC. The another area that I can talk about is the security at the design phase itself. So it is not that the security that you will be developing the applications and now it has come for the testing phase. There are a lot of observations that are discovered and now you are fixing it. The things are gone now. It has to be DevOps kind of technologies wherein while you are developing, you will have a testing mechanism with that model itself. So testing, you have to do it at that phase, rectify the issues, again test it, and continuously you have to get it done. So there are kind of technology that is the new area I can more focus on. The third area that we can talk about is zero trust, right? So zero trust in which we have to be not rely on only the user that is connecting to our network, but it has to also check what is that, who is that user, right? What is his role? Why is connecting? From which location is connecting? What is the zone? What is the time? What type of role he will be having and what type of access he is doing? So that level of monitoring mechanism is required, to understand, to identify the actual threat mechanism. So there are a lot of things that, but considering the time constraint, I can talk about more of these areas which are now new threats which has to be managed with these areas.
Thank you, Sanjay, for giving us a chronological sequence also on how the threats have evolved over the last 2 decades and how technology is keeping pace, and the need is to go more and more into intelligent technologies because the pace at which the threats are coming, it's not feasible to deal with it in the more traditional way. Very beautifully made those points and very, very well received upon. Thank you on all the 3 areas which you highlighted, Sanjay. I'll just extend that conversation with Sanjay and Pawan, both of you highlighted, and maybe Yask, I'll come back to you on that one. While we are looking upon the various threat vectors, and constantly everyone is consistently bringing across, threats are evolving, there's a need to be more intelligent, but there is a huge dependence also organizations find from a supplier lens. Now there are two kinds of suppliers which are coming. One are who are providing services, but another one which is providing technology. And the world is changing so fast with a lot of technology today coming in form of suppliers bringing it, whether it's on a cloud or whether it's on digital channels. Do you think they are also bringing its own threat vectors along with it? And we heard upon last year, pretty much the same time in December 2020, when the first massive supply chain attack happened. And that kind of gave an awakening call to the world, saying how this entire threat can spread across. So, yes, over to you to get your viewpoints and
Yeah,
perspectives.
I think this 2020 has already given a wake-up call to us. I don't think so anybody is now thinking whether the supply chain or our partners can bring a threat vector or a new threat into the system. It's already happening. Yes, it's a reality that we are now living in. In fact, what we have to now look at is a larger ecosystem. The ecosystem which was just limited to our premise, or probably slightly beyond that, is now expanded to so many things. We are not just, security professionals are not just looking at their perimeter, they are looking at the service providers perimeters, the suppliers, the partners, in fact, even the end customers to an extent. A lot of the end customers are logging onto your systems and at times accessing certain things. So the point that is that I need to ensure that anything that is coming inside my network, when I say inside, what is targeting my or trying to target the resources, has to be monitored, has to be seen irrespective of where it is coming from. I think the idea or the idea behind zero trust is what is now more relevant than what is than its requirement. See, I don't think so that we should now look at the service provider, or in fact, as I said earlier also, OT was one. In fact, you also mentioned OT. OT was one area which was never thought of as a IT securities area of working, or the domain. But however, can you now have any conversation of security which does not talk about OT, which does not talk about IIoT? And similarly, can you have a conversation and say that my system is secured without actually looking at these partners? See, the point is that, and there are again two areas to it, two issues. One, not just the typical technological challenge. Again, I say, legal challenges are also. My partners are also accessing the data that I am as a data fiduciary is collecting. Imagine the impact that is going to happen. Let's say tomorrow the PDP becomes it's certainly going to become a reality. The amount of, and again, this I say that it's kind of a it's going to instill some fear into the minds of the people. Imagine the amount of penalties that are going to be levied in case some data is lost by, let's say, a service provider, or let's say a partner of ours who's accessing the data which has been collected by a data fiduciary. This is just one small aspect of one newer threat that has come up. So yes, you are right that I don't think so any discussion can happen without not considering these things. Yes, it is important to understand that it is now immaterial as to from where or what is the line of attack. What is important is to realize one simple thing, that cyber attacks happen because of the vulnerabilities which are in the system, irrespective of who is exploiting. One simple thing that I always say and believe, that the attackers never go for the most complex thing. It is not a mathematics exam that they'll take the most complex question and do that first. They go for whatever is easily available. So if my system is vulnerable, if there are vulnerabilities, whether it is easy, complex, simple, they would go for it. So please, this is for all the security professionals that are listening to this, and the only thing that we need to look at is just looking at the vulnerabilities and trying to close those. That's all.
Beautifully made that point, Yask. Couldn't appreciate it more. Vulnerability is right at the core. Manage the vulnerability. It's easier said also. I know with each one of you, all of you managing it every day, you would have your own other side of the story saying, how challenging and how difficult it is to manage it on an ongoing basis. But it's a very fair point. Thank you, yes, for making it. I recognize we are getting into the last few minutes of our scheduled time. Pawan, I'll come back to you. In this entire dynamic era, where the risks are constantly increasing, threats are not going away, vulnerabilities are not going away. As recent as this weekend again, the world was awakened again to a new reality and everyone was trying to manage it. What would be your tips, 2 or 3 tips to the audience, budding CISOs or budding data protection officers that they should be focusing on?
So first, I mean, it is, what should I say? See, first of all, let's face the fact and let's accept it that there is no 100% security. So don't live in that kind of an understanding that you can achieve 100% security. It will never going to be. Vulnerabilities are going to be there. It is going to evolve. It is going to be present. It is going to impact, and it is going, and you will always be on your toe to protect that out. Now, the important thing is how you mitigate a particular vulnerability when you come across one in your own environment. Your thought process, your action plays a very important role, and I would recommend to focus on that rather than worrying about the vulnerabilities which are there, which may not be impacting you but worrying you by reading, just by reading on. Reading them or realizing that somebody else is got impacted because of that. Most of the cases I have seen, I mean, where people get scared that it has impacted somebody, so it may come to you as well. So not necessarily that would be the case, and you need to analyze your environment and you need to know what you have at present in your environment, and then only take an action or react, rather I would say, if it is going to impact you. And be patient, be calm, and take steps which are necessarily required to mitigate that particular vulnerability. Don't get into hurry, don't get into hush and make another mistake which opens another door for an attacker to get into your environment. It may be there, it may not be there, but recommend to be patient and they take corrective actions accordingly.
Thank you. I think you made the first point which you made. There's no 100% security. Let's not get into that myth. Let's not make those commitments. And the second one, just stick onto the basics. Don't get influenced by the noise which is going around. Very, very beautifully laid out, Pawan. Thank you. Thank you so much for highlighting those. Sanjay, coming to you, any tips that you would like to share upon? I think we're just in the last minute of the meeting today.
Yeah, so I would say I look it a little differently. So first of all, you should have some mechanism which will highlight you this kind of issues at a very early stage. So maybe the same thing happened from our threat intel team. So that give early indications to us before it is actually publishing to the world. So I would also wanted to focus on this kind of services organization should now explore, which gives you the early indication about your organization, also specific to the threats that are widely exploited, and it has to be it may target your organization. Now, what should you do immediately? So you should I have to identify the asset which actually is going to be going to create a problem for you, right? So for the asset, you must have the owner that has to be identified, because that is the bigger challenge. You are not aware of the asset, the ownership at the point of time. Okay, anytime you will get that information, but the time where it is actually required, you should have that readily available. Again, this is only specific to that asset, not to worry about the entire thing, and should not be worried and should not take unnecessary actions which will create or impact the businesses. So be calm, need to identify which assets to be impacted, identify owner, ask him to mitigate the things. Nowadays, everybody knows about the IOCs. IOCs has to be installed at your perimeter security, so that you have to first protect your doors and windows, so that the attack vector will be very reduced. So that I can say these are the main areas we should focus upon, and there all the actions can be taken later on by the respective teams.
Beautifully played, Sanjay. As always, you talked in the past 1-2 decades, and now you have laid down how it should be approached step by step. Thank you. Thank you, each one of you, for making time and sharing your perspectives. Clearly, all the thoughts which you have shared will go a long way in addressing the topic which was discussed today, which is preventing and securing against cyber and information security threats. With that, I'll thank each one of you for your contributions and sharing your perspectives. This is Atul signing off and handing it back to the organizer. Thank you.